Hey everyone, it's Jack here on Strike Zone Media, and today I wanted to do a deep dive and look through every time the Athletics have tried to leave Oakland. The Athletics, as of now, have moved twice in their franchise history and are coming up on their third relocation, leaving Oakland after this season. So with all this talk about where they'll end up, I thought it'd be a great time to look back at every time the A's have tried to leave before their new push to Vegas. Before I begin, I'd love for you to leave a like as it helps me to support the channel and allows me to make more baseball history content. The last video about MLB relocations got, as of now, over 49,000 views, which completely blew me away, and I'd like to thank you all for the support, even if my mispronunciations angered a lot of you.
Some lady named Ruth. Baby Ruth. Babe Ruth!
Also, if there were any attempted relocations that I might have missed in this video, feel free to let me know in the comments. Anyways, let's begin. The Athletics were founded in 1901 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, becoming the second MLB team to come to Philly and were the first of the charter franchises of the American League. Under the ownership of Connie Mack, the Athletics became one of the most successful teams in baseball during the early 20th century, winning multiple World Series titles. However, by the mid-20th century, the team began to struggle financially and on the field. Attendance declined, and the A's found it difficult to compete with the more successful and financially stable teams in the league. So in 1954, when Connie Mack, who was the sole owner of the team since its inception, passed away, caused his sons to start looking for a buyer for the franchise. In 1954, the Athletics were sold to Arnold Johnson, a Chicago businessman who also owned a controlling interest in the New York Yankees. Johnson's ownership of both the A's and stake in the Yankees raised concerns about conflicts of interest and potential competitive imbalances within the league. Under Johnson's ownership, the Athletics' success on and off the field did not change much, which resulted in Johnson looking to relocate the team. Kansas City, Missouri was a frontrunner for the A's due to its lack of Major League Baseball and its central location within the United States. And in 1955, Johnson decided to move the Athletics to Kansas City, where they'd become the Kansas City Athletics. In 1960, Charlie O. Finley purchased the team. Finley had ambitions to move the team to a more lucrative market, and by the 1960s, discussions about relocating the team were underway. Starting in 1962, Finley proposed to move the A's to Dallas, Texas, a city that was eager for their first MLB team, although the MLB rejected the move. Finley was determined to get the A's out of Kansas City at any means necessary, and would send in a new proposal to the MLB after every season until he got what he wanted. So the following season, in 1963, Finley had his eyes set on Louisville, a city which hadn't hosted an MLB team since the Colonels in 1900. In the years following, he would propose to move the A's to Atlanta, San Diego, and New Orleans, and on October 18, 1967, it was officially announced that the Athletics would relocate to Oakland for the 1968 season. The city offered a new, beautiful Oakland Coliseum, financial incentives, and a passionate fan base that was eager for a professional baseball team. Finley transformed the ball club into what we know to be the A's now. He introduced the colorful uniforms, implemented unique marketing strategies, and assembled an all-star roster that would go on to win 3 consecutive World Series from 1972 into 1974, and would win one more in 1989. Now that I've gone through the A's history before Oakland, it's time to look at every time they have tried to leave since they first moved back in '68. I'll briefly mention that in 1970, only 2 years after the A's moved to Oakland, Toronto representatives did meet with Charlie Finley about moving the team to Canada, although nothing ever came from these talks. I touched on this relocation in my previous video, but I'll still briefly go over it for those who haven't seen it, which if you haven't, I encourage you to check out. The link's in the description. Anyways, during the mid-1970s, the A's were trying to leave Oakland after financial and stadium issues, which resulted in Finley looking to leave Oakland only 8 seasons after they got there. The first proposition was Chicago. This was because the White Sox wanted to move to Seattle after poor attendance and stadium issues, but the MLB still wanted an American League team in Chicago, so the A's offered to fill that spot. Once the MLB blocked the White Sox move to Seattle, Finley still wanted out of Oakland, so he proposed that the A's were to go to Seattle instead of the White Sox, as the city was still looking to find a franchise after the Pilots moved to Milwaukee. Discussions between the A's ownership and Seattle officials took place, but no formal agreement or proposal was made. Ultimately, the A's didn't move to Seattle, and the city got the Mariners only 2 years later in 1977. Alright, So I'll also add here that plans sparked once again for the A's to move to New Orleans and play in the Louisiana Superdome, a stadium that was designed to host both football and baseball, with the Superdome's executives making serious talks to relocate the A's in 1979, but the cost of breaking the lease at the Oakland Coliseum was too steep, so those talks ended quickly. As we all know now, Denver eventually got their team, the Colorado Rockies, as a part of the 1991 expansion along with the Florida Marlins. Although hopes for baseball in the Mile High City went as far back as 1979, when Finley wanted to increase the team's profitability and believed that Denver, with its growing population and lack of Major League Baseball presence at the time, could be a solution to the A's financial troubles. Denver was a rapidly growing city in the late 1970s, with a population that was increasingly interested in professional sports after experiencing moderate success with the Broncos reaching the playoffs in 1977 and 1978, and the Nuggets, who reached the ABA Finals in the 1975-76 season. Finley hoped that he could spark that same excitement to convince the MLB to move the A's to Denver. Finley arranged to sell the team for $12 million to Colorado oilman Marvin Davis, not to be confused with Mark Davis or Al Davis, as they have no relation. Marvin Davis would take over the relocation operations in Denver. Oakland officials were willing to allow the A's to break their lease, which required them to stay through the 1989 season, on two conditions. The first being that the A's would buy out their lease for $4 million so that the city could focus its efforts on keeping the Oakland Raiders and expanding seating for the stadium. These talks were likely what started for the push for what would now be known as Mount Davis out in center field. The second of the two conditions was that the Giants would play half their home games out in the Coliseum, representing the entire Bay Area through the 1989 season until the A's lease ran out. Unfortunately for Denver, the move was denied by the MLB, as its owners believed that the A's would damage the league's overall structure and existing franchises. The A's would continue to try to move out to Denver a few more times throughout the 80s, although just like in '79, the MLB would block the move. After experiencing some of the best baseball in Oakland franchise history in the 1970s, winning 3 straight World Series in 1972, 73, and 74, Charlie O. Finley sold the ball club to a group of investors led by Walter A. Haas Jr. in 1980. During the first decade of new ownership, the Oakland Athletics explored the possibility of moving to Phoenix, Arizona, relocating the team to the Phoenix metropolitan area. The main motive behind this potential move was the desire for a new stadium. During this time, the A's were still playing at the Oakland Coliseum, which even back in the 1980s was considered outdated and not up to the current standards of baseball stadiums during that era. Looking back, it's sad to see that throughout multiple owners, none have offered to create a new and updated home for the A's, which has doomed the franchise into the state it's at now. The late 1990s and early 2000s was a scary time for baseball fans, as contraction was a real possibility for a few franchises. Although it's well known that the Expos and the Twins were facing contractions as both teams were having troubles financially and were trying to find new stadiums as the teams were playing in an aging Metrodome and Olympic Stadium respectively, there was an idea to merge the Oakland A's and California Angels in the 1990s as both teams were struggling to gather attendance and had issues with their stadiums. Bud Selig proposed the idea of merging the two franchises into one team that would split its home games between Oakland and Anaheim. The merged team would have a shared ownership and combined roster of players from both organizations. The proposal faced significant opposition from fans, players, and even within the MLB itself. Many were skeptical about the plausibility and fairness of merging two drastically different teams, and were concerned about the impact it would have on the cities of both Oakland and Anaheim, as well as the Players Union. Ultimately, the proposal to merge the A's and Angels was abandoned due to the strong opposition it faced both legally and financially, as both franchises continued to operate independently. As far back as the early 2000s, there was a push to keep the A's in Northern California, even if it meant they couldn't play in Oakland. The first of these deals was in 2001 when the A's ownership explored the possibility of building a new stadium in Santa Clara, California. However, these plans fell through due to various reasons, including opposition from the San Francisco Giants, who claimed territorial rights to that area. After failing in Santa Clara, the A's announced plans to build a new stadium in Fremont, California in 2005. However, local residents didn't want a new baseball stadium to destroy their community, which resulted in the deal officially falling through in 2009. During that same period, in 2006, the city of San Jose expressed interest in becoming the new home for the A's, proposing a new stadium in downtown San Jose. However, the San Francisco Giants again opposed the move. citing their territorial rights to the San Jose area. MLB Commissioner Bud Selig held a blue ribbon panel to help the A's in figuring out a possible home, which included an attempted deal to relinquish the Giants' territorial rights in San Jose, although after a 6-year battle, the A's still had no luck. The Giants are a huge reason as to why the A's haven't been able to remain in Northern California, as they own territorial rights in almost all the surrounding area around Oakland. This wasn't always the case though. In 1990, when the Giants faced the possibility of leaving San Francisco, former Giants owner Bob Lurie wanted to move the Giants to San Jose. Walter Haas, who was still the A's owner at the time, wanted to keep Bay Area baseball intact, even for their interleague rival, the Giants, so he granted permission for them to build a stadium in San Jose, which at the time was A's territory, although the Giants never relinquished their claim to the area, which has doomed the A's ever since. It's now been 13 years since the A's plans to build the new stadium in Oakland have started. Various proposed sites and plans have been discussed, including the Howard Terminal waterfront site and the Coliseum site in the northern parking lot. However, current A's owner John Fisher doesn't seem to have any motivations to keep the A's in Oakland and would rather a city like Las Vegas or Salt Lake City build a stadium for him instead. Personally, I loved the Oakland Coliseum when I went to see the A's play the Giants in an exhibition game earlier in 2024, and although the stadium had maybe like 2,000 fans, I thought it had one of the best atmospheres in all of baseball, and the fans were so friendly, which made the game a lot of fun. It's sad to see a historic team like the A's come to an end after such a historic run in Oakland. My sympathies go out to the city of Oakland and all of its fans, as they deserve to have a team just as much as any other city. The day where there's no professional sports in Oakland is a day that I don't want to see. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and comment down below if you think that the A's should leave Oakland, or if John Fisher is the problem behind all this and should be forced to sell the team. I hope you all have a great day, and see you next time.